Self-monitoring measures you. It's by Mark Schneider. It's many, many decades old. It's almost as old as I am, but a very highly reliable and valid.
It's been used a lot in
Yep.
social network analysis, with the main findings being that people who are high self-monitors tend to be the people who make it to the center of networks. So they tend to be the people everybody turns to for work-related advice. They tend to rise in organizations.
Yeah, generally they're your social butterfly. Your
They
social glue.
butterfly, the social glue.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, companies don't put enough emphasis on that, or they don't see the value because it can just look like it's social, and that often comes and bites them.
Well, tell them the study you're thinking about.
Well, I mean, it's beyond that, but yes, there's one study where basically new ownership came into this company and they fired one person. I think it was one person, because they thought the person was spending not enough time doing actual work and doing too much time chit-chatting. And so they fired them and basically had mass exodus, to the point where they had to bring in consultants to try to figure out what happened. The consultants for network analysis researchers, they went through all the employment records, like the applications they took out. There's like sometimes places will ask you if you know anybody in the company. And so they took they took a bunch of stuff, but that was a piece that mattered. And basically the person they fired was responsible for almost everybody getting a job in this particular company. And the chit chat that they didn't think had any value was actually social glue that kind of kept everyone bonded and together. And in the process of doing that, also probably shared a lot of knowledge about the company because they'd been there for a long time. And so every once in a while, it will bite you to be a high self-monitor, because the leadership may not value it. They may not see it. They may value more of a team environment. And you can look like you're a little bit of a social climber sometimes when you're a high self-monitor, because, you're changing with every situation. We call these people chameleons.
When we're happy with them. Politicians when we're not happy.
Well,
that's a high self-monitor. Trust me, I know. I'm a high self-monitor.
I know you are a high self-monitor.
That's exactly what people say. When they're happy, they say chameleon.
I don't think chameleon isn't all that. I think that can go either way.
Not me. That's a compliment. I'll take that all day long.
Well, that's all right, because you're going to get called that. So I'm glad you take it as a compliment.
She's low, by the way. So it measures you on 3 dimensions. So the first dimension is, do you tend to be direct or indirect with your communication? And so low is Cindy, direct is basically.
So I would describe that differently.
Go ahead.
So you're saying direct, indirect. I'm saying whether or not you are willing to adapt to the social cues of the people around you.
And your 3 planks, that's one is social cues. What's the second plank for you?
Whether or not you're willing to. So the 3 I have is whether or not you're reading the social cues of the people around you. So that's like, do you have the ability to even read the social cues?
Yeah.
2, your willingness to actually adapt to the social cues, which is managing your own expression. That is where I am very low.
Very low.
Yes. That is what gets me on the low side.
Yeah.
And then the 3rd is like this willingness to basically play or act, take on different identities. I'm very good. I have a social sensitivity. I'm very good at reading the cues. I just am not likely to adapt to them.
Yeah. Cindy's a low self-monitor.
I'm a low self-monitor. Geoff basically would have had a perfect score, but he knew he was getting perfect scores, so he lied on the last 2 questions.
Lied on the last 2. There's only 25 questions.
You should never let anybody know exactly why they're taking the questions that they're taking.
That's been studied. I will point out that high self-monitors like me, people think we lie more, but we deceive at the same rate as lows. So highs and lows deceive at the same rate. But people think highs are much more dishonest. Or they think they're more dishonest than lows. Maybe not much more.
Oh, they think you're more dishonest because they see you changing.
Shift around.
They see you shifting your identity depending on the situation. So that, I would say, would appear like you're disingenuous.
Right.
I will say that, yes, your identity does shift from situation to situation, but the underlying thing that ties them all together, which is like really your core values, is no matter what situation you're in, your desire or the value that you're operating under is, I want people to feel good about themselves.
I think that high self monitors, by the time they have become adults, 18, 19, 20, whatever, pick a number, that they've largely, if you let me use the word, they've weaponized this trait to be likable.
No, they could have weaponized it to be manipulative.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. So no,
some.
There's definitely a core value that's back there. That's like the golden thread between all these identity shifts.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that. People tend to call high self monitors like me, as Cindy mentioned earlier, chameleons or adaptable. But when they're mad at them, they call them politicians. And they don't mean it as a compliment. They mean it as, like, you just said this thing, but I heard you say the opposite 2 weeks ago.
And your whole life. So you and I have a disagreement about whether or not that's a compliment or not, but
chameleon
and politician, because your whole life people have been telling you should be a politician, and they mean it nicely.
Well, right. But, what you and I are trying to bring forth in this discussion is good managers have to change to meet their environment. Or let me say it differently. There's a lot of instances where you're going to have to modify your behavior because your company, the team you're leading, is moving target and it's changing. And for people like me, that's going to be easy because it's going with the grain. I was born this way. I didn't become this way in graduate school. And you were born a different way. In your instance, you weren't so terrible at reading the cues, but you never really cared about doing anything about it. And have had to work harder, I think, to adapt to situations and not just to try to impose your will on them.
Well, so I'm definitely a sole trader, right? So, you give me a job, and this is one of the things that impacts career paths between high and low self monitors, is that you take a high self monitor and they know the knowledge map, where they know better because from talking to people, who knows
Talk
what
to this person about this,
and because of that, they will often go, and so they won't sit there and struggle with a task that they don't necessarily know how to do. They will go and seek out those people, and so they get things done better sometimes because of that. At least they get it done faster. May or may not get it done better, but oftentimes I think there's probably an argument that it's better. But the performance part, it can go depending on the measure, on either way. Whereas a low self monitor, you give me a task, and I don't even think about going to somebody for it.
Right.
That's my task.
I got it.
I'm going to figure out how to do it. I have to force myself to seek out who I think might know the information. And
that's interesting. I wonder if low self monitors are less likely to use AI. It's just a research question.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously new. But, I'm certainly not less likely to use AI.
Yeah. I tell them my favorite example. So the reason you should care about this, if you're listening, is that I believe this is fairly evenly dispersed in the population. Although heaven knows,
I think it is.
I've seen a lot of lows lately. We can talk about some of that later on.
I think it depends on also where you're looking at an organization. So usually we're looking at directors and C-suite, and you do tend to get more high self-monitors there.
Tell them why, Deller.
Well, for some of the reasons that we've already talked about. So, I mean, you have made more connections, the information, the knowledge map of the organization better or the group better. You leverage that better to be able to get your own projects done. You're the person who other people are turning to when they need help, even if it's just to say, hey, this is who you should talk to. And so because of that, you high self monitors tend to stand out, and they're able to adapt to positions, especially boundary spanning positions, which are positions where you're going internal to external, you're crossing that boundary.
Yeah.
So a CEO is often a boundary spanner.
Yeah. They're outside of the organization, figuring out what's going on in the environment on
Right.
different.
And you can see why being able to sort of switch out identities seamlessly, depending on which group you're talking to, could be a huge benefit for
Yeah.
people who are in positions where they're boundary spanning and going from like these different stakeholder groups.
Yeah. Now, you can be successful as either a high or low self-monitor.
Yes, but most likely you're going to have to do some compensating behavior.
Yeah, of course.
As a low self-monitor, like I have to, and we were starting to get into that, you know, I have to remind myself when I'm taking too long to learn something that I'm making a mistake. And
Could be.
I need to, no, I mean,
Find
if it's
somebody.
taking me too long,
Yeah.
like I had, like, even just working in like Excel, you know, if it's taking me so long to figure it out, like it takes a little level of frustration. Then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm being an idiot. I need to go to YouTube.
Right. Whereas somebody like me, just to exaggerate to make a point, that would be the first thing I would do when I was stuck. Where is the answer out there?
Yeah.
The answer doesn't have to be in here.
Right.
Because that's not, I'm accustomed to looking out there or externally for the answer to the environment.
Where I'm used to just figuring the thing out on my own and often fail to see that there's an external environment. So, you know, like lessons learned, I've had to learn a compensating behavior on that front because I will just put myself in an office and just work. I actually schedule a time to just walk around and talk. I would just walk down the hall and see whose door was open and didn't look like they were busy and just wander in and talk because otherwise I'd have no relationships.